Hi, Aaron Kirkwood, licensed associate marriage and family therapist with Counseling Associates for Wellbeing in Athens, Georgia. Thanks for joining me again. I wanted to follow up my last video on how I use Gottman method in my own therapy with couples with talk about what the Gottman's term the four horsemen of the apocalypse, or as I like to call the four horsemen of the relationship. These are some things that they found in studying couples, that the couples who were the disasters, in other words, couples who ended up dissolving their relationship or who maybe stayed together but were really unhappy, tend to do more than the couples who were the masters. Now, that's not to say that the masters never did any of the four things that I'll describe here and demonstrate. They certainly did. All couples do. But it's a matter of degree and also a matter of how the other person responds. Okay, so the four horsemen are contempt, criticism, defensiveness, and stonewalling. And just to give you an idea of what that looks like so that you can recognize it in your own relationship and try to counteract and avoid those things in the future. First, before we can solve a problem, we have to recognize that it is a problem, right? And, acknowledge that it's happening. So let's talk about criticism and what that might look like. Criticism, according to the Gottmans, looks like an attack on a person and or their character. And this is sort of juxtaposed with a complaint, and they call that, a complaint versus a criticism. So what does a criticism look like, and what does a complaint look like? Criticism is, God, you are such a slob. You have left your dirty dish, sitting out on the table once again. The cat is over there licking it up now. Now the cat's thrown up onto the floor. What a mess. This is ridiculous. I can't believe you live like this. We're not in a frat house here. Okay. All of these things, that's a criticism. You're attacking the other person's character, calling them a slob. Contempt can sometimes look similar, but it's a little different, and we'll talk about how those things are maybe differentiated. And it's not that you can't do both in one sentence or one statement. So that's criticism, attacking a person's character. How do we bring up a valid concern without it being criticism? So what they would say is you have a specific complaint about something, not someone. So this is a problem for me because of this reason. Gosh, the cat has now thrown up on the floor, and it's made more of a mess. It now I feel like I have to clean this up. I'm not comfortable when things are untidy or unclean, and there was a plate on the table. The cat has gotten into it, and now he's thrown up on the floor, and it makes even more of a mess to clean up. So you're letting the other person know that something's problematic without necessarily saying, "Hey, you slob, this is your fault," right? What does contempt look like? Contempt is when you take a position of superiority and sort of lord it over the other person. It can take the form of eye rolling, name calling, sarcasm, things like that. What does that look like? When can you tell that you've been contemptuous? Your spouse goes out and buys something, and they bring it home. They're excited about it, and you say, "Oh yeah, we really needed another one of those. Yeah, that's really awesome. We couldn't have used that money better, could we?" That's contemptuous, right? Yeah, it may be important to let your spouse know that this is a problem, that you're uncomfortable, and you feel some financial strain and stress. But can you say that in a way that says that, hey, I'm worried about our finances, I'm concerned about debt, and I feel like maybe we need to be more conscientious about how we spend our money. Okay, that feels a little better than saying, "Oh God, you bought another action figure," whatever whatever it is. Contempt actually, the Gottmans found in their research was highly corrosive to marriage, and not just to the marriage, but to the person who was on the receiving end of the contempt physically. It caused them harm. It caused their immune system to be depressed. So definitely contempt is something that you want to avoid at all costs. And it's going to happen, right? But recognize it, apologize it, recover from it. And now I see those two as sort of on one side, and then in the defensiveness and stonewalling are sort of a response to those things. That's not to say that because you have one partner has expressed criticism or contempt, it necessarily means that there is going to be defensiveness and stonewalling. It's not an A plus B equals C. I really see it as an interactional pattern. It's sort of like a feedback loop. I'm sure that you've had that experience where you start off sort of calmly having a conversation, and the next thing you know, you're fighting and you're bringing in things that aren't related. People are getting their feelings hurt, and at the end of it all, you go, "What in the world happened?" Things escalate. So defensiveness, what does that look like? Defensiveness is often it is a response to, say, contempt or criticism. When someone says, "You've left this dish out, and you're what a slob," rather than the partner at that point feeling like saying, "You know what, dear, you're right. I am so sorry. I will try to do better in the future." They say, "Well, I didn't have time because I had to go take your car to get the oil changed because you haven't done it in 4 months and your car's going to blow up." How likely is that to steer the conversation in a constructive place? It's not. So there needs to be some ownership. That is, and rather than becoming defensive, if you can find a way to say, "Again, you're right. I'm sorry. I'll try to do better in the future. Here, let me get that." And then if there needs to be a conversation about the car and the oil change, that can happen, but that needs to be a separate conversation. And then lastly, stonewalling. And stonewalling happens when, in my last video I talked about you get that fight or flight, your frontal cortex, the front part of your brain kind of shuts off. You feel overwhelmed emotionally, and so people will attempt to leave the conversation to avoid the conflict altogether. And what that may look like this. Your partner's over here talking to you. Maybe your leg's tapping because you're feeling pretty agitated. But it may look like, "You know what? I gotta go get some work done. I forgot I gotta call somebody for work. Oh, I gotta go." You're removing yourself from the situation. So what is the antidote to stonewalling? It's bringing down that physiological arousal that is causing you to feel overwhelmed so that you can resume the conversation. It might be letting your partner know, rather than saying, "Hey, I gotta go," and just leaving or just clamming up and sitting there and listening to the contempt and the criticism pile up. It looks like, "You know what, I'm feeling kind of overwhelmed right now. Okay, I don't want to be dismissive, but I can't talk about this at this moment. Okay, because it's not going to be constructive. Can we take 30 minutes? Okay, and in that 30 minutes, what you do is you separate physically. You practice some sort of self-soothing thing, whether that's deep breathing, meditation, reading a book, just anything to get your mind off of whatever the conflict is. And then you can come back together. And maybe 30 minutes goes by and you're still really upset or fairly upset. That's okay. Come back to your partner because you set a timer for 30 minutes. You come back and say, "You know what? I'm not ready yet. Give me another 30 minutes or give me an hour this time." Maybe you go to the store and come back. But so the person gets a chance to calm down. They both do. The other partner doesn't feel like they're not being heard, like they're just being left hanging. Okay, because when that happens, rather than the person saying, "Okay, that's cool," they're more likely to escalate. They're going to be more critical. They're going to be more contemptuous, right? So that's what Gottman's termed the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and some ideas about how you can A, recognize it, and B, prevent it. Thanks a lot for watching. There'll be contact information below. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave those as well. Take care.